I want to, I can't help but ask this question because when I think about what a writer does as he's developing characters, in a way, when you're just starting out the narrative, you don't know these characters yet. You don't even know where they're headed yet, right? They're kind of like strangers,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And
Yes.
like the similarities of you describing like the first time you meet somebody. Well, when describe that process of character development and what happens when you start to get to know a character and when and how far away from who you really are when that point just like veers off. How difficult is it to write a character that's far removed, right? Like in real life you probably wouldn't have anything to do with that person, but in this creative state,
Yeah.
you're not only obligated to, but it's almost, one could argue, the more interesting part of the writing is when you're getting out of your element, right? I mean, what do you think?
It's very true, because this kind of fits with almost kind of another thing. So I kind of go to the musician, which is a follow-up to the actor, and let's say my last book that came out, and there's a part in that. So being called the musician, the key line, kind of the take is the musician gives voice to the song inside all of us. And in that, music really brings out emotion in us. And in writing the book, I kind of realized that I wanted to cover the full gamut of emotion. So there, and we all like this whole, the happiness, the joy, the blissful part, that emotion is settled there. And then there's the other ones that kind of come in that aren't as pleasant, from point of view of hatred, jealousy, but all of those come out through music. They affect us in some way, that they come out, and it's not necessarily a lyric. It can be just the tone of how the music, like the minor keys versus the major keys. And I decided that I needed to write a part that came out of the actor, that was kind of lost in the actor, and that would bring us to, well, characterized by jealousy, shall we say, the actor, but terror and extreme fear. And writing that character that was very secondary in the first book, the actor, to bring this about, I had to go to some kind of dark spots that are not like part of my persona, so to speak.
Well, what are we talking about? Like a Salinger mental illness type of darkness? I mean, how would you describe that?
Like, yeah, for me, no, from my side, it was just getting myself around like horrifying things that are written about, and so like I during that period I read Blood Meridian from Cormac McCarthy.
Oh, he's one of my favorites.
Yeah, he became just like a whole nother picture to me, and yeah, he's definitely a special, but he has the ability to write like intoxicating love, while at the same time just absolutely terrifying events and scenes. And so I was starting to gravitate from like where you could go, and to go back to movies, right? Like Hannibal, and the things that frighten you, to create scenes where and this is like I'll say the last third of the book is really about someone who is literally out to get another person, not just in a bad way, but to finish them. And but at the same time, to like teaching a lesson, like the mix up that goes on in this this world, because it's irrational, right? It's not like a logic thing. And crossing those roads back and forth became a very how do I say it became I became very, very intrigued by it. Like it was like I couldn't get enough of how do you put this together, because you can only go so far with rationale in that set scenario. And the act of actually doing something in the abduction of a person, like that, you crossed a line, right? And how far can you go? Because I think the human psyche has all of it in it. We don't like to admit it, but it does.
Well,
And
you
so,
kind of alluded to it earlier when we were talking about the evolution of technology. I mean, what is the fine line between, innovation and insanity? Because a lot of these ideas would have been considered, the technology we have now, completely nuts to be
yeah,
writing about, even though, Arthur C. Clarke practically predicted everything, which if you
yes.
haven't seen that, but I play off of that fine line between insanity and genius, or
Well, the forward reviews, when they reviewed the book, this is what they call it: is this was an intimate story that examines the spaces between art and madness. And I said, well, wow, you hit the nail on the head of what we were trying to do. So, and part of the thing is that you're picking up a book. I think you were the one that told me this story. Was you were on a plane with the actor, and you read the actor, and a guy was sitting beside you, and he says, okay, I want to read that book, because any book that a guy can read on a plane flight, um, I want to read. Like, he won't put it down. And you don't always know how that's going to come about. And that's part of me, what I kind of find fascinating. And that's why I said it has to be intriguing enough to capture someone. And each time I go down this road, it becomes almost more of a challenge, because you're trying to, okay, how can I up my last ante, so to speak? And it becomes, how do you make that more real? And that's why, like I said, like the Cormac McCarthy. So the second thing I did with the Globe was they asked me what books were like shaped my life, which is and I started to pull apart some of the books. So the article, and the one I like the most is Moby Dick, because I Moby Dick is one of these books that almost is like wine or cheese. It ages well, and the language, like, yeah, it's not a 30-second read. It just isn't. But the language actually brings an emotion in that is what brings the whole story to be so vivid to me. And it's long, it's also epic, and in today's world it's really difficult to have a, like, when I think of Infinite Jest, like, who sits down and reads 1,000-page book today, right? Other than me and maybe you. Those are the things that really become really interesting to me. And that's why I said, like, in you building a character, I always start with the name. Fun enough, I need that name to kind of gravitate to. And then I don't really write them off anybody that I know or see. I just they become part. There's obviously some part of me, and just mixing up the different events and how they react to them and how I see them reacting to them. And it's one of those things like that. In my most recent book, I'm kind of exploring a situation where you're forced to live in your head. So,
I wouldn't want to be in that position, speaking from personal experience.
well, I'm thinking of a prisoner,
Oh
and
my
it's
God.
it's just like this idea of rehabilitation, but as a thinking person, being locked in an 8 by 8 cell for however
Claustrophobic.
long. Like,
Oh.
what like you have to do different things in order just to survive. And so again, it comes into that whole kind of picture that it gets more and more intriguing, and hence my reading becomes more stretched out as well, right? So it's like how those things, because you the like how we deal with consciousness and the subconscious, and how we are as human beings and how we stay connected with it, which funny enough to me is finds its way in all my books, because in many ways, like, the actor is very much a whole mind story.